I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is More Than Blockchain. And on this episode, I'm going to talk about the 5 reasons why I think people really don't care for Bitcoin. And this episode is kind of inspired with current conversations I've had over the last 2 months with friends and family saying, hey, maybe you want to look at Bitcoin. And let's just dive into why I feel or what these 5 reasons are. Now, the first 3 are just inherent to what Bitcoin is. And if you check out the infographic on the screen, you're going to see that Bitcoin, in my opinion, is the perfect mix of these 3 things. They're finance, energy, and tech. So let's first start with finance. Finance. Most people don't like to talk about money. It's a really uncomfortable thing. And it's fascinating, though, because most of us work somewhere between 20 to 60, maybe even 80 hours a week chasing this thing called money. But then we don't really want to talk about it. So then in conversations around Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is around the idea of hard or sound money, people, their eyes just gloss over and they don't really care. Talking about money is something that is very, very uncomfortable for large swaths of the population. And this is why I think becomes something that people just don't care for. Whenever they think also, when you talk about finance and they think about Bitcoin as an investment, people don't invest their money generally. In the United States, most of the middle class, what they're going to do is they have hands-off investments. That's what I like to call them, or laissez-faire investments. One of those is they're going to buy their single-family home, and then every weekend they're going to put a certain amount of money into it, fixing up this, fixing up that, and they're going to pay their mortgage. And that's kind of like a laissez-faire investment. They know, or the belief is that their home is just going to invest over a certain period of time. The other thing the middle class, and I'm just focusing on the U.S. context here, the other thing the U.S. middle class does is they'll either have a pension or a 401k. So this is going to be money that's going to be taken out of their weekly, monthly paycheck or bi-weekly paycheck and put into an investment vehicle. See, these aren't things that people necessarily have to think about. They're not thinking about an investment strategy per se. So when it comes to finance and people think about Bitcoin as an investment, it falls into the speculative investment, and then it gets really close to, is this a Ponzi scheme, and all of the other FUD or fear, uncertainty, and doubt narratives that I constantly talk about on More Than Blockchain. So that's number 1, as to maybe why people don't care for Bitcoin. Number 2 is that it has to do with energy. Most people have no idea how the energy grid works, and I'm included. Here I am raising my hand. Before I started working at a Bitcoin mining company less than half a year ago, I had really never touched the surface of like how energy works and how many solar panels you would actually need to be able to have a miner run or have an ASIC run. These type of things. Most people, and once again, I'm going to use the US context, when they go home at night and their lights turn on, they actually have no idea how that works. And once again, I'm saying most people because I include myself in this. If you think about the amount of people that actually work in the industry of energy, or the energy industry, I should say, around the world, it's actually a lot of people are part of that value chain, but most people don't stop to think about where their electricity comes from and how that works. So that's number 2 as to why I don't think people care for Bitcoin. And then number 3, we've had, first of all, finance, energy, and finally tech. Most people watching this, while they use tech every day, just like they use finance and energy, it may not be something that they necessarily think about. So it's just outside of their normal day-to-day. And so when they think about Bitcoin, if we go back to the original infographic, and I'll put it up here, the idea of finance, energy, and now finally tech, these are things that are beyond people. Most people, once again, I'm going to include myself, I hate printers because they always break down. And then I don't feel as tech illiterate as then I feel tech illiterate or not as tech literate as I like to believe that I am. Whenever we as humans get around things that don't work, we tend to feel less powerful. We tend to feel less in control, and we tend to feel less empowered. Therefore, these aren't things that necessarily we want to deal with. So behind Bitcoin is the blockchain, and the blockchain can make many people feel really not empowered because it's this new technology, something else I have to learn. So those are the first 3 reasons why I think that people don't care for Bitcoin. Because either one of these topics, whether it's finance, energy, or tech, people just don't feel empowered. Because the amount of people that work in finance, or the amount of people that work in tech, or the amount of people that work in energy around the world, they're very, very few relatively to other professions and just other types of conversations. And I'll put it to you as somebody watching this or somebody listening to this on a podcast. When was the last time you sat around and you talked about energy with somebody other than maybe talking about your energy bill? Oh, it's going up. I don't know what to do. Or I don't know how we're going to heat the house. Or it's really hot outside. I need to go get a new air conditioner. And then when it comes to tech, other than engage with the tech platforms that we have today, less than, I think, 0.3% of people on the planet can actually code. So the amount of people that can build in tech are very, very few. The amount of people that are actually in the energy sector, while a lot of people are part of that value chain, including every time you drive by a gas station and someone who's maybe working in the gas station store or being a gas station attendant, they are part of that value chain. Energy isn't something that we normally talk about day to day. And then finally, that first thing, finance. Most people do not like to talk about money. It makes them feel very, very uncomfortable, even though most of us spend 20 to 80 hours of our week chasing the money. ATM after the money. So those are the first three things. Number 4 as to why I don't think people care maybe for Bitcoin is that to learn about it is really, really difficult. There aren't necessarily books written about Bitcoin, even though there are, and I've shouted them out before. But what I'm saying is there aren't these encyclopedias or this world knowledge that has been passed down, and these aren't things that your grandparents or maybe your parents even know about, or maybe your friends even know about. And so the dissemination of information and how you engage in the knowledge is truly internet-based. And unfortunately on the internet, while there's a lot of really good news, there's also a lot of really bad news, or poor news, or what we would call fake news. There's just people out there spewing things that aren't facts. And so this is number 4, why I think it's really hard and why people maybe don't care for Bitcoin, because it's actually really hard for them to engage with the knowledge and try to figure out, what is this thing? Where should I learn about? And that is honestly one of the reasons behind why I'm so excited to create this content and why I created More Than Blockchain, because I think information around crypto, around Bitcoin specifically, as we're talking about that here, but crypto as a larger category or an industry or sector is really, really hard to find good information. So I'm trying to create that good information here for people watching. So I'd say that's number 4. The way that you learn about Bitcoin isn't what we have traditionally done, honestly, for thousands and thousands of years. And with that said, I'm going to leave links below to 2 books. One of them is the Bitcoin Standard, and the other one is Mastering Bitcoin. The Bitcoin Standard is kind of a sociological look at why humans are probably going to adopt Bitcoin. And then Mastering Bitcoin is more of a technical look at the protocol and the blockchain behind Bitcoin and how all of that works. So I'll leave those descriptions below if you're more of a book person. And then number 5, I think people don't care for Bitcoin because, honestly, the way that it is reported about is not great these days. You just had Elizabeth Warren come out and say, hey, Bitcoin is bad. It's only being used by North Korea to basically fund terrorism. You have Jamie Dimon come out from Chase Bank, who's one of the biggest bankers in the world, and say, hey, if I were the government, I would ban it. There's so much FUD out there, and I recently had a friend say this to me. There's just so many mixed signals out there around Bitcoin that it's really, really hard for people or anyone who's maybe interested to learn to try to figure it out. They'll come on this channel and I'll talk about Bitcoin in a very glowing way. But then, like I said, they're going to go listen to a politician like Elizabeth Warren or a banker like Jamie Dimon, who basically think it needs to be regulated to oblivion and that Bitcoin and crypto are only used for nefarious activities. But as you know, and if you follow this channel, there's always a new FUD narrative, fear, uncertainty, and doubt narrative, whether it's boiling the oceans and it's bad for the environment, or whether it's used for terrorism, or whether it's a Ponzi scheme. These are the 3 things that we normally hear. And I would say that this is the 5th reason. Basically, there's so much FUD out there that it's hard for anyone who wants to learn about it to kind of find a semblance of truth. Therefore, it just turns them off from learning any more about it at all. It just says, no, I'm not going to do this. So there we go. These are the 5 reasons why I feel that maybe people just don't care for Bitcoin. First being, well, it has to do with money and we don't want to talk about money. Second being energy, and I don't want to think about that. Third being tech. Aside from using my social apps and being able to connect everything through Bluetooth, I'm not really a tech person, and tech, I don't really want to talk about it. Number 4 is that the way that you're going to have to learn about this is probably by sitting on X, formerly Twitter, YouTube, being part of a Discord community, or basically using the internet to learn about things. And this isn't the way that I think most people have been taught to learn. Even millennials and Gen Z on down, we are still using books. Yes, we leverage the internet every single day to learn about stuff, but when it comes to something as important as Bitcoin, I just don't think people are necessarily comfortable with watching a YouTube channel, even like this, to maybe get their information. And that's okay. And then number 5, I think that there's so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or FUD narratives that float around the mainstream media and just everywhere, that it kind of clouds people's ability to sift through and find the truth or find actual facts. Maybe not the truth because that's perceptive and that's based on people's perceptions of facts, but find the facts. So Hopefully this helped you out. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Please go ahead and subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. And if you enjoyed this and you know a friend who maybe you've been talking to about Bitcoin, please go and share this episode. Maybe it will give them a little bit of insight and touch upon a point as to why they've been so kind of reticent or so kind of standoffish about diving into more about what Bitcoin is. As always, go ahead and follow us on social media at More Than Blockchain, and I'll see you next time.